Hello, everyone. This is StrawberryShorty here with Interview with the Vampire, Episode 10, No Pain. And no idea if I'll be able to continue with these videos. There's no real place to advertise them, and even though they somehow escaped YouTube's automatic copyright claim, AMC is still trying to get them taken down. So we'll have to see how those turn out, but, in the meantime, we pick up with Daniel seemingly making a list. It was hard to read, but it mentions the Playboy magazines, Alice, Kate, Claudia, and an underlined statement, "This time I won't save your life." Did Armand do that? Daniel's at some sort of Asian place that served him a still alive fish, which, was somehow more disturbing than most of the story so far. A man who doesn't give off a main character vibe starts chatting him up and claims to be a reader of his books. Things take an interesting turn when this guy seems to know about the interview and what Daniel went through yesterday. I wonder if this dude is from the Talamasca, which is an organization in the books. The thought actually did pop into my head because he looks too old to be a main character, which made me think of someone whose name is currently escaping me from the books. That was an older character that was part of that organization. But anyway, while pretending to talk on the phone, this guy talks about how the number of vampires have nearly doubled in the last year, going from 900 to 1,600. And the guy introduces himself as Raglan James, though Daniel doubts that's his real name. But I mean, have you been watching the Mayfair Witches? What was that dude's name? Cyprius Graves or something? Unless they're all code names. Anyway, he claims that 4 others have tried to do what Daniel is, and they're all either dead or undead. Encrypted files have apparently been placed on Daniel's computer, and Daniel doesn't hesitate to announce to everyone that the guy is some kind of intelligence officer. He's gonna get this dude killed. Daniel returns to the apartment and makes small talk with Rashid, who he is finally just calling by his name. I totally think I see a guy's legs hanging from the ceiling, and I'm not entirely wrong because Armand is floating up by the bookshelves. It's unclear if Daniel knows this, because I don't see how he could fail an observation check that obvious. His list gets focused on, and he's looking through the encrypted files right there, so it feels like he's being a little careless. Daniel wants to know how normal vampires keep people like Rashid in line, implying that they would use threats. Rashid says they're peaceful people, which makes it sound like he's talking about all vampires. I guess he hasn't been listening to the interview much. Daniel disagrees, given that vampires tend to drain and disappear humans, and Rashid defends this as a biological imperative in conflict with human morals, and he seems to really believe it. Whatever the story is there, Armand thanks him in a way that makes it clear he should go, and then answers Daniel's questions on his own. The average vampire has minimal contact with humanity, and when they're exposed, they feed or run or kill themselves. Daniel starts recording this, and he hid the list, and Armand is not that stupid, right? Armand tries to apologize for Louis invading his memories, but Daniel keeps talking over him, wanting to know how the vampires hide from the cloud. They both agree they should probably wait for Louis, but Armand ultimately keeps answering Daniel's questions. These two have a really interesting dynamic. He talks about Lestat's prophetic vision, which I feel is referring to vampires being more public without humans even realizing it. Armand ends up talking about his past. In 1556, he was sent to lead this underground group called the Children of Darkness, which lived in squalor and shame. He feels Lestat and goes to investigate, finding him performing on stage for an adoring crowd. There's apparently some rule they had decided on where no vampire is allowed to show his vampire self to a mortal and let them live, which Lestat is apparently breaking, but we don't see him actually do any vampire stuff while performing, which leaves me confused. Using telepathy, Armand, who is totally not crushing on Lestat, reaches out to him. He identifies the other man as having been created by Magnus, who he believes is now dead. Claiming he can protect and teach Lestat, he urges Lestat to come to him. Hard to imagine that working, and sure enough, it doesn't. But that only seems to excite Armand more. His coven, meanwhile, are annoyed that Lestat is just off on his own doing things they've been told they can't. He even has a mortal lover. Lestat walks with the guy and speaks of someone who has been looking at him constantly. He's clearly aware Armand has been following him, but keeps slipping into French every time he talks. Anyway, Armand confronts the pair, and when Lestat dismisses him again, he throws them around with his powers. Technically out in the open. We learn that the guy Lestat is with is called Nicky, which I figured he's mentioned in one of the books I have read. I'm now realizing that all the people besides the two of them are frozen in time. Lestat is puzzled by this power, which Armand says he'll have in time. Rather than focus on that, Lestat demands Armand release Nikki, then lunges at him when he doesn't. The results are as expected. I'm beginning to see how Lestat turned out like he did. I mean, this is not how you pursue a relationship. Armand infuriates Lestat by claiming to be his coven leader now and kidnapping Nikki to ensure he comes to their lair. I know it's not going to happen, at least not to Armand, but I'm kind of rooting for Lestat to just, kill them all. Armand claims Nikki is unharmed when Lestat comes, despite that clearly not being the case. He's accused of living in sin, and Lestat mocks their beliefs and way of life. He urges them to abandon it all. And Daniel realizes Armand got Lestat to come there for exactly that purpose. Armand admits Lestat's words were his thoughts for half a century. Lestat says they are the gods, then picks up Nikki and leaves. The children of the coven left after that, some having fun with mortals, while others went mad and ended themselves. Even though this was what Armand had wanted, he was on the verge of going mad himself. He apparently made no effort to join the outside world for some reason. When Lestat appears, Armand even has the gall to blame him for destroying everything. They ask about each other's abilities, and Lestat bites Armand. Armand realizes Lestat made Nikki a vampire, and that despite Lestat's insistence, Nikki likely won't take to being a vampire. This leads to the start of the theater group, as Armand realizes not all of his coven have left him. They make us watch more of those dark performances that I'm not into, while Lestat puts the moves on Armand right there in their balcony seat. Nikki is watching them, and even though Armand points this out, Lestat doesn't care. And man, Nikki does not deserve this. Lestat and Armand confess their love to one another. And Daniel doesn't like it when Armand seems to intend to stop there. But Louis comes in and reveals the rest. Armand taught Lestat the mind gift, and then Lestat was gone in a week. He did send Armand a lawyer and money to keep the theater going, but as Louis points out, he abandoned Armand and Nikki. Lestat is only in it for Lestat. Sure, let's pretend Armand didn't force his way into Lestat's life when Lestat made it clear he wanted nothing to do with him, using powers Lestat didn't possess to threaten him. As for the Nikki thing, I bet Maven is going to have words about that because, well, we don't do book spoilers here, but I can tell you things played out very differently there. The focus shifts back to Louis' story. He and Claudia are ironing out the details of their backstory. Claudia is finally being allowed to work backstage at the theater, and she again looks and even talks like an adult. No one would believe she's a 14-year-old. Armand shows up in tan, and it's not a look that I think suits him. He is really weird with Claudia, and despite her excitement about this whole theater thing, I'm not sure Claudia is meant to have a leader. After she leaves, Armand says that she's taking the abuse in stride, and Louis has never seen her happier. There's also a really odd painting in the background I wish I could unsee, and they are making me watch one of those plays again! One of the vampires sneezes during Santiago's big moment. I thought that was Claudia for a moment because I had looked away and I thought she was going to get in serious trouble. I think they're hazing her or something. She can't look anyone in the eye and they call her a weird name. We learn more than we ever needed to know about how the theater operates, and disposing of the victims they kill on stage is now Claudia's job. The basement also has what she's told are burial vaults. It's basically like a morgue setup. They're filled with heretics and lawbreakers, but rule breakers, and Claudia doesn't get to know these rules not until some ceremony. Seems a little stupid since she's expected to live by them. Elsewhere, Louis and Armand are walking, and Louis makes it clear he's not joining the coven. Good on you, Louis. I wouldn't either. Illusion Lestat joins their walk, as Armand and Louis admit they like each other. Armand can sense that he is in Louis' thoughts, and also warns Louis that the coven is jealous of Louis' independence, but Louis is content and assures Armand he has room for him. Back in the present, Louis acknowledges that he put Armand in a difficult position, while Daniel gets distracted by an instant message from the guy he met earlier. They don't show the computer enough, but I totally saw something labeled Telemasca. Things keep popping up all over his computer, and this dude is not being subtle at all. Now they're trying to get Daniel killed. The vampires obviously pick up on something, and Daniel does a terrible job trying to cover, and he asks about Claudia. We see Claudia chatting with Santiago, and learn that Armand didn't make him. His creator was put in the burial thing downstairs by Armand, which Santiago doesn't seem happy about. He's also apparently the youngest member of the coven, but also the strongest. He asks what gifts Claudia's creator gave her, and she jokes that it was the ability to lie well. Santiago claims she'll make a wonderful actor, but seems to get suspicious near the end. Meanwhile, Louis is still hanging out with Armand, trying to convince him he's as evil as any other vampire. They're overheard by some guy that shares his 2 cents, and I can swear this is the same dude who chatted up Daniel at the beginning. I could be wrong, though. In the middle of their philosophical debate, Louis is distracted by Lestat playing the piano and singing really well. Armand picks up on it again and clearly knows who Louis was really with. Louis admits it was Lestat, and as Lestat, and he does this as Lestat is seemingly trying to tell him about Armand, which is odd. Louis tearfully admits that he killed Lestat and that Lestat had it coming. Armand has known the whole time, as I thought. Louis is worried for Claudia and insists she wasn't involved. Armand claims he broke one of the great vampire laws, which again, they didn't know about and continue to not be told about. And it makes no sense to not be able to kill one of your own when any number of circumstances could make it necessary. Anyway, Lestat's tormenting causes Louis to snap, and he ends up storming off. Outside, he runs into Lestat at a park, and I'm honestly not sure if this is supposed to be the real one or not. They start making out, which really doesn't help clear things up, and Louis ends up smashing Lestat's head against something repeatedly and ends up killing what turns out to be some guy. Was he making out with that guy too? Like, that must be a really weird encounter. Random dude just starts making out with you, and then kills you. Back at the apartment, Claudia insists they continue working on their story. She doesn't pick up on Louis being upset, but gets herself upset as she finally talks about what that creep did to her. Apparently he kept her tied up under some floorboards and would constantly tell her he loved her all the while hurting her. One day he told her he was tired of her gloomy face and just left, which was where she got the idea to make that part of her story. She thinks Lestat might be right about other vampires being vicious and wants Louis to come see when she finally joins the coven proper. He promises to. In the present, they take a break, allowing Daniel to finally look through all those files. I'm pretty curious about them too, honestly. But all we really seem to learn is that the theater burned down at some point, which I, honestly already knew. We cut back to the show, even though no one is telling the story now, which is pretty strange. Seeing Louis in the audience, Santiago mentally expresses his displeasure and speaks of the body that was found in the park. Since Armand has failed to recruit Louis, the coven wants action to be taken, and Armand realizes that the coven truly does feel this way. He promises to deal with the matter once Claudia has fully joined them. The ceremony for this starts below the theater, and as Armand goes for a walk with Louis, we see Santiago is jacked, and also finally get to hear those rules. Rule 1. The coven must have a leader, and only said leader can make more vampires. Rule 2. The dark gift must never be given to the crippled, the lame, or to children. I guess it doesn't magically fix you or whatever. Rule 3. No vampire must commit to writing the history of the vampires. Well, Louis breaking that one in the present. And Claudia's diary count? Rule 4 is just that one about showing your vampire nature to a mortal and letting them live. Armand and Louis have broken that one. And the final rule. You can't destroy another vampire if you're not the coven master, which is a stupid rule. Claudia agrees to all these and becomes an official member of the coven. While this is happening, Armand is walking with Louis through some tunnels, and Louis realizes he is considered to have broken laws. He doesn't protest being killed, but requests Claudia be looked after. Armand thinks she won't last long, having been made at 14, but Louis disagrees. Is Armand going to try and use this to get Louis to join them? I put Louis. Claudia is gifted with a super cute but also super childish dress and learns she'll be the star of a new play. She's clearly less than thrilled to see they're casting her as a little girl, and that she'll likely be playing that part for decades. Back in the sewer, Armand clearly doesn't want to kill Louis and ultimately just takes Louis back to his apartment. Sure, the Coven's going to be thrilled about that. Armand asks Louis if Lestat broke him, and Louis says no, but he still carries part of him with him. He learns of Lestat's relationships with Armand, the two kiss, and Louis invites Armand in. I gotta admit, I'm pretty interested to see where this goes. I know how things played out in the movie and even in the book, but will the show follow that same path? Guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!